All right, so we're going to look at two test cases tonight, and I'm going to toggle a couple of screens. I'm looking at the PDF that I shared with the team last week of our first client, Pearl White, and I'm going to be toggling over into Tax Slayer, where we can look at Pearl White's return. So just a quick summary on Pearl White. She's a senior citizen, retired, has a number of sources of income: Social Security, bank annuity, some dividends, bank interest. She pays real estate taxes and made a cash contribution to her church. So other than the real estate taxes, I've already entered everything into Tax Slayer. So I'm going to open Pearl White's return. And you'll see if I go over to the federal section, you can look over to the left here and see I've populated all of these income sources and so forth. So the federal return is done. I'm going to create the state return in production and Tax Slayer. Chances are you be presented with the Pennsylvania return. I've been practicing so much, I've deleted it a couple of times. So these are just a couple of extra steps. So I'm now presented with the main menu for the state return. Sorry, just one more thing I need to do. This is how you'd be presented with the Pennsylvania state return. The first thing we're going to look at is the tax forgiveness. Here in the credits menu in the middle of the screen, I'm going to click there. You'll see the top line item, Schedule SP Tax Forgiveness Credit. We're going to begin this form. So Pennsylvania gives tax forgiveness to those income earners whose income is below certain levels, depending on marital status as well as number of dependents. So the software calculates that for us. All we need to do is ask the software to do it. Here in the Schedule SP, the very first question, to complete the tax forgiveness credit, select yes. There are other questions to answer below that I'm not going through. This is, again, this training is simply the basics of the Pennsylvania return. So that's all I need to do to see if Pearl White qualifies for tax forgiveness. And I'm going to back out of that flow. We'll look at a PDF of the Pennsylvania form to see where that tax forgiveness credit appears, as well as the worksheet behind it. But I'm going to move on to Pearl White's real estate tax rebate. When I look at the PDF I shared, Pearl White let us know she paid real estate taxes of $5,505. She has provided banking information where she would want direct deposits, if applicable. And she has also provided, we'll let this represent the tax bill, the real estate tax bill. So I have everything I need in order to complete a PA 1000 in Tax Slayer. The PA 1000 is located in the miscellaneous forms menu at the bottom of the Pennsylvania return menu. So I'm going to click there. Then you'll see right in the middle of the choices, it says property tax / rent rebate form PA 1000. So I'll click there. There are far more things to fill out than the Pennsylvania tax forgiveness form, and I'll walk through all of them. The first line item you see is first-time filers of PA 1000. I'm going to click on this and just show you this is where you would look to see and explain to someone who's filing for the first time what additional paperwork would have to be submitted with the PA 1000. The actual information would begin on the following step. To complete property tax rebate, select yes. So I'll do that. The next area I need to complete is this general information. I'll click here. This PA 1000 is for the taxpayer Pearl White. The county is Lancaster. Pearl White is the property owner. Qualification for rebate, age 65 or older. We know from the intake that Pearl White is a widow. That's denoted, can't get it highlighted, but it's denoted right here. So I'll note that her spouse is deceased. and I'll click continue. So we've now completed the general information. We do not need to fill out the income menu in most cases. For Pearl White, we need to complete the next item, total amount of property taxes paid. I'll click there, and we're simply putting in the amount from her property tax bill, which, as you recall, was $55.05. So I'm going to put that amount in and click continue. That's all I need to do for the software to calculate Pearl's rebate, but she also had requested a direct deposit. So I'll need to enter that on the form itself. I've got her banking information highlighted right here. So at the very bottom of the property tax rebate menu, you'll see it says direct deposit information. I'll click there and start filling it in. I'll put in the routing. I'll put in the bank account. And this is a checking account. And I'll click continue. That's everything I need for the PA 1000. So I'll click continue, and I'll back my way all the way back out to the main menu of the state return. I'm now back out at the Pennsylvania state return menu. I'm going to click on this small little printer icon, and that will produce a PDF of the Pennsylvania tax return. I'll try and make this a little bigger. So here's her PA 40. You'll see most of the work was done in the federal return when I entered all of this information. So you can see all of her income. You can see her tax liability is $275. You can see on line 21, her tax forgiveness credit is 0. We'll look at the SP schedule to see why that is. Although I tend to think it's because her income is just outside of the range of SP. So she owes $275 to the state. She did not get tax forgiveness. Again, we'll look at the form. So here's the form. Schedule SP was filled out correctly. She is unmarried or widowed in this case, and it has calculated her total income in Pennsylvania, and the percentage reward is blank. Sorry, it's this line here, which is null. She gets 0% forgiveness because the income is too high. So it just goes to show it's very easy to go into the software and do the SP check. It's literally 2 or 3 keystrokes, and then you let the software do the calculation for you. Many of our clients qualify, and it's very easy to do in the software for them. Moving on, for Pearl White, farther down in the tax return is her PA 1000 property tax rebate. Here's the form. A reminder, this is something the client's going to take with them. We do not e-file PA 1000s. We help to assemble all of the paperwork, making photocopies of property tax bills, etc. But we give them instructions about what they need to do when they leave the building in terms of mailing it off to the state. So here is the PA 1000. The income gets picked up from what I entered in the federal return. It looks at 50% of the Social Security income, as well as she had dividends, she had annuities, she had some bank interest, etc. Her total income is $16,000. Looking on page 2 of her PA 1000, her total property tax is less than that, but greater than the rebate she's entitled to, $300. That's based on this range. Her income falls between $15,000 and $18,000, so she gets a $300 rebate. And you'll see here in the form, her banking information is here for the direct deposit. So that completes everything we need to do for Pearl White's state tax return, as well as her PA 1000. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions in the chat related to this return before we move on.
At this point, there are no questions.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Robin.
Go ahead.
So my question was the bank account information. It looked like on the printed version it had X's on it.
Yeah, we'll have to look in production. I think that's just masking taking place in the test environment. But I noticed that
Okay.
in years past, it's been fully exposed.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, there is a question that's in chat now. It says, what documentation is needed to attach to the form?
So in the case, thanks for that. So in the case of the property tax rebate, we would include the bill itself. In my example document, this is not the official tax bill, but we like to see a bill that shows that it was paid. Some people can pay their bills at banks, anything that shows proof. Worst case, you could contact your tax authority and get proof of payment. If you're a first-time filer, you have to prove, depending on how you're qualifying. So let's say you're 65 or older, you could send in a photocopy of your driver's license. If you're qualifying for PA 1000 because of a permanent disability, you would also include an award letter, your disability award letter, to prove that you qualify.
Jeff, this is Annette. As a follow-up, do you need to provide documentation for income, such as the Social Security and then any interest or dividends or pensions?
Yeah, thanks for that. We provide the federal tax return that shows all of the income sources and can align with the PA 1000. You can't submit the PA 40 because it doesn't have things like Social Security.
So we would attach a copy of the federal tax return to the rebate form.
That's right. It would go with the bill.
Okay.
And when
perfect.
you look on the back of the official Pennsylvania PA 1000 envelope, there are 4 or 5 check boxes to remind you of everything that needs to go in, and one of them does mention proof of income. So that's where we would append the federal 1040.
Jeff, just to be clear, this is you don't have to provide the whole return, federal return. It's just the front page.
It depends on the return. I think the SRs you might have to go all the way out to page 3 now. I'd have to look again, but just the main 1040. Let's say that, not the schedules, the workbooks. Any other questions?
Yeah.
One more
right now here.
question, Jeff. Excuse me, there's one more question in chat. The question is her total 1099-R annuity taxable in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
So annuities are considered interest. That's why it's taxable in PA. Okay, and someone had a question they were asking.
Yeah, if you see the income is over that limit on the rebate, do you need to bother with the PA 1000 form at all?
Harmon, we prefer you do the calculation because it's so quick in the software.
Okay.
Actually, if you had asked me, I would have said, oh, she qualifies, because my brain was thinking anything under 9, but she must be very close to the limit. I would just let the software do it.
Okay.
And we would also show her that we tried, and that would be, we would include a copy of it, even though she didn't qualify, but we'd show we had done the check. Any other questions, team?
Nothing else in chat.
Okay. All right, thanks. We're going to leave Pearl and move on to Joe Renter. So Joe Renter is a senior citizen. He lives in an apartment in downtown Lancaster. Single. He collects Social Security and has a part-time job. He thinks he may qualify for the PA 1000 rent rebate. He pays a monthly rent of $800, and he lived in an apartment building for all 12 months of last year. And he has provided his landlord information and his bank info as well. So similar to Pearl, I've taken all of his paperwork and put it into the federal return, including his Social Security income as well as his part-time job. So if I go look for Mr. Renter. So here's Joe Renter. Again, I've put in his W-2, I've put in his social and so forth. I'm now ready to progress to the state section. Again, because I've been practicing, there is no state return. You might run into this if you change filing status when you're doing someone's return. The software will warn you that it will delete the state. So just for the purposes of a mini exercise, I'll show you how to pull up a Pennsylvania. I'm going to add a state return. You can click on the map or you can choose it from the drop down. And in this case, we know that Joe lived here all year. We might need to use a part year if someone moved from in or out of the state and we wanted to isolate Pennsylvania income for the purposes of the PA 40 because we only do Pennsylvania state returns. But in this case, this person's a resident. So now I'm back to the Pennsylvania state return menu. I just, again, I know that TaxSlayer needs me to do something here in the basic info. I have to give it a school district. So this Lancaster School District, and then I can click continue. Again, like with every return, the first thing I'm going to do is the check for tax forgiveness. I click on credits, I click on SP. In most cases, I click yes and continue. It's done. The software will do the calculation for me. Now I'm going to move on to Joe's rental information, which we have here. So just like Pearl White's PA 1000, I go into the miscellaneous forms menu. Right in the middle is the property tax rent rebate form. I need to click yes that I want to complete the property tax rebate. I need to complete these general questions. So Joe is the taxpayer. Joe lives in Lancaster. Joe is a renter. Joe is 65 or older, and Joe's spouse is not deceased. I'll click continue. Income menu I don't need to touch. Because Joe is renting, I won't be filling out the property taxes paid. I can skip that. I'm going to go down to this line item here, PA 1000 Schedule RC. RC stands for rent certificate. So we need to create a certificate that will go in this individual's PA 1000 to prove the rent they paid. Sometimes the clients bring the rent certificate with them. One way or another, we need to get certain data points into TaxSlayer, and that's what we're going to do on this call tonight. And then we'll talk about what the client might need to send into the state, depending on what they brought to us for their appointment. So I'm going to click Add PA Rent Certificate, and we'll just walk down through the screen. The first line item is rental address. And we know that Joe lives at 123 Prince Street, apartment 12. And that's downtown. So that's the rental address. Next line item is landlord information. We know that he rents from Princely Apartments at 120 Prince Street. So I'll put in that information. And Joe, their phone number is something local. I'll just make something up. Continue. Now, type of rental. We know that Joe lives in an apartment building. So I'll select that from the dropdown. There didn't appear to be a building name. You could fill it in if it was applicable. This is very important, rent paid. Rent paid is what drives the mathematics of whether or not the person will get a rent rebate. So even if the client has brought their own rent certificate, we will still need to fill out the rent paid portion. At least I'd recommend filling out as much as you can. So here under rent paid, it's asking what was the amount of rent paid per month. So when I look, it was $800. Put that in, and then down towards the middle of the page, it wants to know the number of months the unit was occupied. This is an important value and must be selected. So we've now told the software that Joe's rent was $800 for 12 months. And I'll click continue. And that's it for the rent certificate. I'll click back. We know that Joe has provided his bank account information. So just like Pearl White, I'm going to go in and populate his direct deposit info so that his rent rebate gets put right into his bank account. So routing number, account, and checking, and I'll click continue. And that's it for the PA 1000. At this point, we're gonna look at the state before I do Joe's local. Joe earned income, so we need to do a local return, but I want to make sure that everyone sees what we've done for the PA 1000 for Joe. So this is Joe's Pennsylvania tax return as it is before the local. You can see here is his $3,200, his part-time job, which means he owes $98 in tax to Pennsylvania. $112 was withheld, but when I look on line 21, his tax forgiveness credit is $98. So he's forgiven the full amount of tax that he owed. Therefore, he gets a refund of all the tax that he paid. He gets the $112 back. So if I scroll down here, here is the PA 1000 schedule. And you can see that on page 2, he was awarded 100% forgiveness of his tax. And it line items the amount. So well worth the keystrokes for Joe. He gets all of the state tax back. Going down to the next page, this is the start of his PA 1000 property tax rebate. It pulls a lot of the income info from the federal. You can see on line 1, it looks at 50% of his Social Security plus his part-time job, and it comes up with a total income of this amount. On page 2, you can see that Joe paid $9,600 in total rent for the year, and the 20% of that is still greater than the rebate he's entitled to, which is $500. So Joe's going to get a $500 rent rebate. And again, here's his direct deposit bank information right on the form itself. This last page is a rent certificate. So this is where we filled out the princely apartment information and the rental details, the dollars and the number of months. Joe now needs to take this document, and we'll explain this during his as he's leaving his tax appointment. He needs to take the rent certificate to his landlord, to Princely Apartments, and have them sign. We have trouble highlighting it, but have them sign here where it says landlord and date it, and that's the landlord verifying that Joe actually paid this rent and that Joe actually lived in this apartment for 12 months. So I'm highlighting this because it needs to go to the state, but it's entirely possible that clients have brought a completed rent certificate, one that already has signatures from the landlord and is sufficient to provide to the state. They can send that, but we would still need to go into the software and make sure that the rent certificate was completed so that the software could calculate the rebate itself. One way or another, we have to put it in the software, and the client needs to get a signed copy to put in their mailing to the state. Are there any questions about the rent rebate before I move on to doing Joe's local return?
Yeah, I gather that all the Pennsylvania returns will be paper copy mailed in. Is that correct?
The PA 40 itself is e-filed.
Okay, but so you do that from the location where you have the VITA set up, correct?
Yes, when we e-file the state, after the federal is e-filed, then the state gets e-filed.
Okay, and then the client has to mail this other stuff in to follow up on it?
That's correct. The client will mail the PA 1000.
Got it.
I noticed that
No
both.
questions in chat.
Oh, go ahead.
No questions are in chat at this point.
Okay, I had one other question. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes.
I noticed that both of the examples, they're single, is not dealing with married. Is there anything specific or different that needs to take place if it's a married filing jointly return for these claims?
No, other than it's an aggregate income and it's subjected to the same ranges. Whoops, sorry, I'm trying to highlight the income ranges. So there's no doubling of the income levels because you have two sources of income. Okay,
thank you.
And I would also point out that the state can sometimes be a little fussy if the tax return is, let's say Joe renter is on the tax return, but Mary renter is on a bill. Sometimes that can require a little explanation. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to go in and do Joe's local. Joe had provided a W-2, and I'm pulling that up now. So Joe has local wages here in box 18, local income tax paid, and a locality. For those that have done VITA with us for years, 36 is a very common code. We used to have to leverage those numbers specifically to make the software cooperate. My experimenting this year has proven that that's not necessary. I would encourage you to put in the code that you see in the box, consistent with what we do with all the other boxes in the form. So with that in mind, I have already put in this information in the federal W-2 section. So I'm in the state return. Instead of clicking here on this pencil where I would be driven back into the state return menu, I'm just going to click here in the middle where it says localities. Right about the middle of the menu list, it says Pennsylvania local. We will not have to bother with these others. Pennsylvania local is sort of the generic local tax return that our local tax authority accepts. So I'll click on begin. And just like the state, just go from top to bottom. So there's basic information to fill out, the city for which you were filing. I'm going to go up here. I guess it doesn't matter. Joe lives in Lancaster. The next value it wants is the tax rate for the city as a percentage. There are a number of ways to get this information. All of the Chromebooks at the site have bookmarks. They're probably not exactly like my bookmarks, but there is a municipal lookup tool. This is a state tool at Munistats provided by, that is linked by our tax authority that we can use to look up tax codes and tax rates. So I'm going to go back and look just to reconfirm. Joe lives at 123 Prince Street, Lancaster, 17601. So I'm going to put that in. We also find that you have to copy the information to the work address as well. And then I can click info. This works relatively well. It's not good for every address, but I find it, at least for me, to be a good starting point to getting city codes and figuring out rates. So here are the results from the lookup. Here's our PSD code 361001. And this is the combined tax rate, 0.6 plus 0.5. So Joe pays city tax of 1.1%, and we have his PSD code here. So I'm going to put in 1.1 and go down here to PSD and put that in. So now we've completed the basic information. The next item is income. I'm going to click there, and we're going to start looking for W-2. So here under W-2 information, I can click begin. You'll see there's a button add form W-2. When I click that, I'm presented with a drop-down box. If Joe had more than one W-2, or if it were a married filing jointly return, you might see multiple W-2s. You might have to select them individually. In this case, Joe has one. I'll select it and click continue. And that's it for the income section for this return. And I'll continue through. That's all we need to do to get a basic local return done. Again, there's some other variants and some other things we might need to do, but this gets us through a good 80–90% of our clients. So I'm going to click continue. I'm going to go all the way back out to the Pennsylvania menu so we can have a look at that PDF, because now it's added the local return to it. Nothing different here on the first few pages. This is just Joe's Pennsylvania return and his PA 1000. Starting here is the local tax return. It may look familiar. It looks a lot like the paper returns that we use. But you'll see here, this is the 6-digit PSD code. And you'll see Joe's job income. Sorry, I'm having trouble highlighting. $3,200 in income. You'll see it picked up the 1.1% tax rate and calculated that out. And the net is that there is no payment due, that's zero, and there is no refund. So this client is at break even. We can have the client sign the return. And again, for those that are new volunteers, the local is mailed, just like the P1000. So we would help to get everything in the envelope. And in most cases, the client could sign it and maybe take it, put a stamp on it and mail it right away. There's generally no additional paperwork. We would include copies of the W-2. If you were getting W-2 information off of a telephone and there wasn't something physical, the software does print this backup page, this employment worksheet statement, which summarizes the needful information from the W-2, what the local tax authority would require, and is a reasonable substitute. So that was it for the local tax return. Are there any questions?
Jeff,
There is a chat question.
Jill's
Okay.
having a little trouble.
Can't understand her at all.
Go ahead. What was the question?
So the question in chat is, what about the 52 local service tax?
The $52, I probably didn't put it in this client's. Yeah, we didn't put this information in there. So if the client was entitled to getting an LST rebate, there's a paper at the sites that the site coordinator could help you fill out that would allow them to get their Lancaster service tax back. That's the $1 a week tax that people get paid to work in Lancaster. And if you pay more than the amount or have income below a certain amount, you're entitled to get it back.
I never did that. Did you?
Any other questions?
If a lot of times we don't know because it's not on the W-2 because it's not really, doesn't have to be. I think they have to make over 12.
Any other questions, folks?
Yeah, I had a quick question. So what is the actual limits for who needs to file local? Like if you're just retired, like the example we did with Pearl White, who's retired, has no W-2, is the local still required?
Yes, you have to earn, excuse me, you have to file local tax on any earned income. I think the state, it's $35 or something. There's a low end on the state, but you know, consider rounding, of course. If your income is super low, it might not round up to $1 of tax owed, but otherwise you're supposed to file.
But Pearl White didn't have any earned income, right?
Correct.
Right, that's what I was asking. If so, it was someone like Pearl White who who just has retirement and then interest, like no earned income.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Yes, correct. They would not file a local return if it was the first year. If they had just retired, we would encourage them to file a local return, and we would denote that they had been retired, that they were retired, and hopefully the tax authority would stop dunning them every year to file their tax return.
Okay, but the first year, you probably do it just as a safety precaution that it's filed, even if you don't owe.
That's right, yeah. Especially if they bring in the form with them, if the authority has sent them this year's tax return, we could just take the paper copy, mark them as retired, and send it back in with their signature.
But then after that, you can just pretty much not file.
That's correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jeff, I have a couple of chat questions. The first one is, I was always told to ignore the LST tax on the W-2 and not to enter it anywhere.
Yeah, there's no way to enter it in the software itself, but Lancaster, you can even see that on this website, they talk about limits. There's a form you can fill out in Lancaster where you request the tax authority to give back the $52 based on certain conditions. But it's not done through the software, it's offline.
Hey, Jeff,
Yes.
could you repeat Michelle's questions? Because her voice is totally garbled.
Okay, sorry. So there was a question. We have some folks from the York team on as well, and the question was, we were told to never put the LST information into the software, the $52 local service tax. So I was confirming that was correct. It didn't go in the software. Instead, if the client's entitled to a refund or a rebate, rather, there's a paper form we can fill out. But I don't know if York does that.
Right, okay.
Jeff, there's another question. They're asking on a local return, how do you mark that return final when they retire?
I'm just looking to see if we can, sometime, the software may not let you do it, but we would, worst
Guys,
case.
go down,
Yeah, I
Jeff,
wanted
just
to-
go up a little bit above PSD and it says final return.
yeah,
Go into
I-
basic information.
So I just wanted to try, I put it in the local, I just don't know if it's gonna populate the little mark. Sometimes those little things, yeah, so it did. So I went into the local and chose reason for no income is retired. So you could do it that way as well and just print it out and have the client sign it. Any other questions?
No chat questions.
All right. Well, again, I'm gonna put this recording up on YouTube and post the link for everyone. And I thank you all for joining tonight.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.